Oh, we are live. Alrighty. Hey, Andre, how you doing today?
I'm good, Maisha. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really grateful to be able to be here with you today and to spend some time building community and keeping it real.
Yeah, me too. Like I mentioned before we went live, I really appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. I'm grateful that we could do it. It's been a long time coming.
For sure.
It's been a long time coming. So for the folks who are new to you, Andre, tell us a little bit about yourself and yeah.
Sure. So, I'm Andre. My background is Jamaican and Cuban. I think it's very important for people to understand that I am a son of immigrants. Though I was born in the United States and raised in the United States, that has so much relevance to the way that I think and look at the world and move through the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, so shout out to Claudette McKenzie and Antonio Henry for making this baby. And what I do what I do in the world is I live to try to help people feel powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to understand the power that we have together to change the world. And that comes from my own experience of political depression and working through that and finding agency.
Yeah.
And finally, how that kind of expresses itself is I love to make music. That's been my passion my whole life. I've been writing songs since I was 8 years old. Never gonna stop. And I also write and speak and all those things. But so using all those gifts to try to help us feel powerful, beginning with myself.
Right. That's right here.
Yeah, beginning with me.
In our work, I think it's so easy to be like, we're gonna go out and do all these things, and then you get burnt out and be like, nah, not this time.
I mean, yeah, I totally relate to that. Like, and I think that it's easy to get distracted in that way because that's what people. At least let me talk about my own experience, and not
Yeah.
universalize it. But I started speaking up about racism, social justice, nonviolent struggle, a few years ago. I think that might have been 2014, maybe, and eventually when it started, I knew that it was deeply personal, right? I was speaking out because of what I experienced in the world, right? And I started
Yeah.
writing songs. I changed the subject matter of my music to write more about my experience of being black and social justice stuff. But when it started, I knew that the reason I was doing this was because I had a bunch of people that I knew personally online saying things like, well, how do you know that? How do you know that the cops killed Philando Castile because of racism? Or how do you know that race was involved with the killing of Mike Brown? And so I was like, well, I know because I've been profiled by the police several times. I know because I've been stopped and frisked. I know because I've walked into stores and been followed and watched. And all this like, but somewhere along the line, when you start speaking up, I feel like somehow what I discovered was I felt a disconnect between this being a very personal thing
Yeah.
and the creation of content for other people. And
Mm.
and eventually I was like, oh no, 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 wait. I I gotta to that get back to that feeling or that connection of like my personhood to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's fine for what I'm doing to be helpful, but I don't want to be gutted of the content of my personality so that people
Right.
can enjoy my content as some other brand of anti-racist entertainment.
Wow. Because that's what they're looking for. Like I like the anti-racist entertainment. Like I've never gotten on TikTok, Andre, and now
Mm,
we have a TikTok account, and
okay.
it's like a whole new audience. But then
Mm,
as you're talking about entertainment, I'm like, wait, am I entertaining these folks?
right.
Like, is this the anti-racism education where they're looking for somebody to tell them something that they've already learned?
Oh yeah.
And like for the reinforcement, it's so interesting.
Yes. Yes.
And we can easily get put in like that content creator box and we lose ourselves and oh, let me make sure the scene is right. Let me make sure we have a script. You know what I'm saying?
And just the production of content. It's like I used to produce so much content, and part of that, I was producing a lot of content before I had a team, but then I put a team together
Yeah.
we were just like producing like so much content, like, and eventually when the team fell apart, I found I didn't have the energy to rebuild one. I was so I was so burnt out. I mean, I was like, this happens. Like you build teams and people move on, people outgrow you, or you fall out with people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This happens all the time. You replace people. And I
Absolutely.
was like, I don't have the energy to train somebody else or to whatever. And that really got me thinking. It was like you get into this kind of work because you have you're compelled to, right? You know, there's a higher calling around it.
I'm
And
not
then
pushing no more buttons.
there's like a higher calling around it. And then you find yourself eventually just kind of like grinding out content because that's what people tell you need to do so people will pay attention.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with the attention economy right now. So, you know, y'all just gonna have to forget me.
Right. Like hope something old pops up that reminds you of the work that's left to do.
Yeah. Until I have something new. So
Right. Like what's something that you're noticing in the world? Like what's something you're noticing in it that like you wish people could like see a way out of? I'm kind of giving the question away. So there it is.
right now, it's despair.
Mm.
And I'm gonna say I have a complicated relationship with despair because I want people to feel their feelings, you know, and so I want for if you feel hopeless, for you to allow yourself to let that feeling pass through you.
Yeah.
I want for if you're feeling desperate, which is so I think that the same root of despair. If you're feeling desperate, for you to let that feeling pass through you, rather
Mhm.
than to keep it locked up in your body. You know, I live in Medellin, and like I said, I come from a family of immigrants, so
Yeah.
I can't speak for everybody else, but I know that in the communities that I grew up in, the community I grew up in, and the communities I live in now, there's a lot of pushing down the tough emotions. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so, like we're all like, "Hey, cómo estás? Sí, bien, bien. ¿Y tú? Sí, bien, todo bacano."
It's like, mm-hmm.
And like, but then I have people that hit me up through text message telling me that, you know, they feel alone. They don't have anyone else that they can text but me. And I'm like, we just met 6 months ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm honored that you can talk to me, but something is wrong if there's only one person you can think of to talk to and you just met them a few months ago. Anyway, I said that just to say that, like, I don't want to tell people not to feel what they feel because I don't think it's
Right.
healthy. And I actually do think that feeling, you know, that deep sadness or rage or whatever can be, I think it's useful. I think it's helpful.
Right.
I started doing my work out of a deep depression because of the state of the world, you know, and how it was personally impacting me. So I do think it can be useful. But anyway, the thing that I feel like I see or sense is like this palpable exhaustion and
Yeah.
despair. And I
Yeah.
want for us to come out of it, but I know that I can't rush people out of it. I can't rush myself out of it. I've been feeling it too for years. And I'm just now starting to feel re-energized. And it's a day-to-day thing. Like some days it's like, okay, I feel like maybe 15% charged, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really good day for me. You know.
That 15, man, let me get past 10.
Yeah, you know.
You said so much, but I love how you pointed to despair and that feeling of despair and hopelessness. Um, and I'm also noting like this, it's not 2020 energy, but there's a lot of I need to start my journey. I need to learn again. I didn't get it right. A lot of people are like
Oh.
wanting to they figuring out like, oh, I didn't something was missing in 2020 that they want to go back and start over. It's really interesting.
That is interesting, especially figuring that out just now. I mean, no judgment. Whenever you figure it out is when you figure it out. But I'm like,
Right.
man,
But
That's
I think what it is also that that Hillman talk is the new HBCU for Black folks on TikTok. I think
um,
people are wanting to learn more and do more, and they already causing harm, and the tears have already fallen, from
mhm.
Black folks to white people. But it's just really really interesting, like how cycles repeat. I'm also noticing a repetitive cycle.
Yeah.
I was around in 2016, and it feels feels like 2016 energy, but with a
Mm,
lot more fear and despair. And I
yeah.
know we can come through it. To your point,
Right.
we history has shown us we can, but how do we pull people out of like their delusions of grandeur right now?
I'm curious, what do you feel like people, what do you see people trying to learn right now?
Um, like I don't know. I think one of the things people are trying to learn how to build community
Yeah.
or what that even means. I'm seeing that a lot. I'm also seeing people. I'm really seeing it mostly about community, and then
Yeah.
I'm also seeing people wanting to like understand more. Like it's still the intellectualizing. Like
Hmm.
it's almost like if you hear the same thing from seven different people, seven different ways, you'll finally get it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
a lot of energy stored in the body, a lot of grief and sadness, but it's just being, like you said, it's just being pushed down.
Yeah. That is really interesting because I feel I have been tempted to put out like, here are the books you should read. And then I
Yeah,
was like, no, don't give them any books to read. It's it's not too late to start reading, but
right.
the situation that we're in right now is one that does require action.
Yeah,
So it's like, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna send people videos of authors talking about their books.
right.
So you could spend an hour on this, or you could spend 15, 20 minutes on this, depending on how long this interview is, and get what this person is trying to say. But this is gonna have to be a learn as you go kind of thing, you know.
Wow.
Um, it can't just be listening, learn. It can't just be listening and learning right now. It's got to be listening and learning, and action.
And maybe that's what it is. It's the freeze. They don't know what's the step to take. What does
Yeah.
action look like for me right now? It's like how much of myself am I willing to put out there? Am I willing to like be bold? Like those would seem like questions people would have to ask themselves because I know they ruminate a lot before they take action, and then there's rumination after.
That reminds me of this activist group that I started in Pasadena in 2020. Um, and I remember there was so basically what happened was there was this Black Lives Matter chapter in Pasadena, and it imploded. I was there when it imploded. I was a part of it. I was like a co-leader, and there were really no Black people in this Black Lives Matter chapter. It was mostly white and some non-Black people of color.
Oh wow.
So when the lead organizer for this chapter made it clear that they were an authoritarian, um, the group imploded. And I kind of picked up the pieces and was like, hey, like I wanted to get these people trained. And so like I paid for trainings out of my pocket for the group,
Wow.
with different organizations. How do you do different actions, learning strategy, da 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 da.
Right.
And I put everything that I knew into it. So I built a digital library with every resource that I had. And we met, we took a few weekends, and with the core of the group, and whoever the core of the group was whoever wanted to be the core of the group, by the way. So the if you showed up, you were core, basically. Um, so with the core of the group, we did like half day Saturdays for a few weeks, where it was like a download of this is everything that I know I want to impart to you, and we would have different people
Wow.
come in and teach us and da 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 da. So, but even after all of that, Because I was like, I've been thinking about leaving the country since 2017, right?
Hmm.
So then I was like, I don't even remember what happened. I don't know if I was going back to Jamaica or whatever, but it was clear that I wasn't going to be staying in Pasadena.
Yeah.
And I remember just checking in on them, and they were frozen. They, even after all the training, all the action that they've taken through 2020, I'm like, y'all are ready to take action. But they didn't feel ready to take action. And I think there are a few things at play. And I feel comfortable talking to you about this because I know that like you keep it real on every side. Like we're not just gonna talk about the nonsense of
Yeah.
the conservative Republicans, but we have to look at ourselves too. And so there were a few things that were holding them back. One was they were afraid to make a mistake, and I think
Absolutely.
that's a big one. People are afraid to make mistakes, and I kept telling them that like revolution is not, it's not making lemonade. You know what I mean? You can't. Someone can't just hand you the recipe and you put this much water and this much lemon and this much sugar and you got it. Like revolution is an iterative process. You try something, you fail, you reassess,
Yeah.
you try it again,
Yeah.
strengthen it, and you try it again, and maybe you find out, okay, maybe this isn't working. Then you try something else again. You fail, you try that again. You try to combine A and B and try those things together. That's how working for change works. So
Absolutely.
if you don't start making mistakes, you can't get better at revolutionary action, right?
Absolutely.
So that's number one. Another roadblock for them was that they had been given the impression that because they didn't have black leadership, that they were not allowed to take action.
Right.
And I'm like, well, the name of your group is not Black Lives Matter. So, you know what I mean? Now, this would be problematic if y'all were trying to be Black Lives Matter, but y'all not trying to be
Right.
Black Lives Matter.
Absolutely.
You know, y'all are an entirely different group. And they have been given that impression by the kind of misconception that arose during 2020, and I'm probably a little bit before 2020, but when we take identity politics out of its context, right?
Yeah.
And we start playing rock, paper, scissors with people's identities and saying, well, this person's more oppressed, so this one beats this one.
Those oppression Olympics.
Right, you know what I'm saying? So they didn't feel permission to act.
Right.
And another part of that, which was what I witnessed, was it was kind of abusive what they had endured because they were being mistreated by a black person because they were not black. And that's how the former lead organizer had justified it to me was I can be disrespectful to them because they're not black. I'm a dictator, they're gonna do what I say is what she told me.
Wow.
So like I use that example and I tease that out to say like, yeah, like I see people being frozen, by these misconceptions that have arisen. And I think that all social movements leave behind some great misconceptions too. Some of that is purposeful. The government actually wants certain misconceptions to arise.
Absolutely.
And it's like, yeah, but y'all have to work through this because we have to take action.
It's like that's why I was like, hey, get unstuck. Like, wake up.
Yeah.
There's so much work to be done, but it's just like being frozen and the hopelessness. I mean, man, you said so many powerful things, but you're absolutely right. I think it's their perfectionism that
Yeah.
is like the wanting not to fail and wanting to be perfect, and they just have to get it right. It's like that was beat into them.
Yeah.
Like you got to get it right. You got to get it right. And so there's this collective freeze, Andre, is so wild because it's like as soon as they hear the right voices, they're like, oh, I'm snapped out of it now. And
Yeah.
to your point, like it's all of this is planned, like all of this is regulated, and like revolution is not born it's not born in organization and hierarchy.
No.
You understand? So the fact that they want like even waiting to be told what to do and how to do it and who's in charge, it's just like wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Oh, for sure. And as you said that, I realized the oppression Olympics are based in perfectionism too,
Yep.
because we're saying that certain forms are inherently better than others, you know.
Yep.
And it's in a different frame, right? Because we're and it's like, okay, this is where we got to break through that common sense, right? There is an anti-black common sense that says that the ideal form is white, straight,
Well,
able-bodied, Christian, male, all this stuff, right? But we've taken the same common sense and just flipped it and said the ideal form is, you know, some other version of oppression. There's a different hierarchy. And that's what I saw the group that I described not being able to work through is like, listen, y'all don't have any black people in this group by coincidence, you know,
right.
just by happenstance, you know. It's not like y'all saying no black people can join, you know,
But it's not by accident that they're not here.
you know, and and we have to look at the complexity of why there were no black people in that chapter too, because they came from Black Lives Matter. So the question is, why were there no black people in that Black Lives Matter chapter to begin with, right? And that's a question about the lead organizer who described themselves an authoritarian. Da 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 da. It was like, oh, okay,
Now we see what the real answer is.
okay, yeah, yeah. None of these people are actually from Pasadena either. That's very interesting. None of your neighbors decided that they were going to join your Black Lives Matter chapter because they knew better. And those are some of the complexities that have to be discussed. And I get that, like, the identity and perfectionism and all that kind of stuff is like, this is stuff that's deeply ingrained. This is stuff that, especially in a world so influenced by Christendom, right, and Christianity,
Yeah.
because I'm shocked at how many people I've met in just activist circles that are not religious,
Right.
but people who come into the groups are all have, like, not all, but many have backgrounds in evangelical Christianity or some version of Christianity, and those ideas are rampant in, you know, some of those systems
Yeah,
of
they
thought.
are.
So.
It's so much. Like it just yeah. For me, it's just like I see things and I'm like, oh, this is not new. This is not new. It's like I've been talking to people about ancestral remembrance
Yeah,
because a lot of folks are like, how can you have joy? How can you be grateful and all this? And I'm like,
yeah,
I have the DNA of folk who have that in them. So it's in me. You know what I'm saying? It's
right.
ancestral for me to like see everything and be like, it's gonna be okay. Literally, I'm like, it's gonna be fine.
Yeah,
And I feel it because history has shown us with all of our leaders and heroes and activists and organizers that it does get better. It's not maybe what we
yeah.
always want, but it gets better.
Well, yeah. I mean, that is such a huge. Okay, what's happening right now is outrageous. It is, and it's scary. I
Yes,
get that it's scary,
absolutely.
and at the same time, the system that we've grown up in has made sure that we don't know the stories of ordinary people who have taken on these powers before and won,
Hmm.
so that we don't understand that. Okay, let's take for example, Donald Trump signed I don't know how many executive orders in his first week, right?
Yeah,
A lot of that stuff like can't legally stand, right? The only way that it even can be accomplished is if the courts and all these other there's a bunch of people who have to take his side and participate with what he's doing.
right.
That alone is a lesson that has not been driven into us enough, that the game Simon Says stop work doesn't work if people don't do what Simon says, right?
Exactly.
So Trump is saying Simon says this, and if people say no, the game doesn't work. um, but also there is this thing that they call oppression backfiring in
Mm,
nonviolent struggle. And
yeah.
basically, because a dictator's power depends on the consent of their subjects, there comes a point where the people say, "Okay, no, we're not doing this no more." You know,
Like this is enough now.
especially when you do something. Okay, so even though Sudan is still going through it,
Whew,
they
shoot.
toppled a dictator in 2018,
Yep.
and oh man, it's I'm losing what the trigger event was, but because I wanted to use it as an example, man, I forgot what the trigger event was, but it's something that you would think would be small, right?
Right.
But basically, what I'm saying is that oppressors eventually cross the line. And
Mm-hmm.
when they cross the line, the very thing that they're doing to oppress their people is the thing that backfires and triggers the power, the collective power of the people to bring them down.
Right.
And so it's like I'm watching all these executive orders fly, and I start remembering, okay, a lesson that I've learned about calm, which is recognizing real threats and learning to perceive real threats. Donald
Yeah.
Trump is signing executive orders, certain things that just are not going to fly. So I don't need to
Right.
be outraged and tweeting about every single
Every
thing.
single thing.
You know, that's one. And number two, because he's doing all of this, he's going to cross a line, messing with people's Medicaid, messing with all this other
Child
stuff.
care.
Yeah, like he is playing his own dangerous game because, like one writer said, Gene Sharp, when it comes to the dictator, eventually they reach an ultimatum. They have to either succumb to the will of the people or or they have to kill everyone. That's the
Right.
ultimatum, right? And they're not going to kill everyone. So eventually, with enough resistance, you put the dictator in the position where the only decision that is left for them to make is what airline they would like to take out of the country. So it's like, like I don't feel like, oh, nothing's wrong and da 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 da. But I said all of that just to say that the system we've grown up in has made sure that we don't have perspective.
Exactly. That's exactly what the word is. I haven't been able to think of it all. They don't want us to have perspective or be aware or no. They want us to stay asleep.
Yeah, exactly. They want for us to be in this moment and just in this shock and awe moment, afraid, overwhelmed, enraged, confused, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They don't want for us to have the perspective of we've always been fighting fascism. It's always been fascism.
Always.
It's always been fascism. You know, where they just started using that word in the 1930s, and when they did, even Langston Hughes. I love this Langston Hughes quote. Langston Hughes said, "Black people don't need to be told what fascism is." He said that.
We don't. We know what it's like to live under it.
You know what I mean? And
Or what
then
was the other one they were saying? An oligarch. And I'm like, this has been an oligarch. What are y'all talking about?
exactly. Exactly. I mean, like, what do you call taking slave labor to enrich the richest people in the country? Like, this, it's always been an oligarchy. It's always been fascism. It's always been the things. And so then when you start putting that in perspective, you realize that every victory we've ever won in this country for social progress has
Yep.
been against fascism.
Yep.
We know how to fight fascism because
Yes.
we've been fighting it all along.
This whole time.
And it's like, I'm starting to get chills because I know that I'm telling the truth right now.
I feel the truth. Like, it's so real.
Because like Hitler and the Nazis were studying us. So why do we keep looking at them to understand the moment that we're in? They were looking at us to do what they did. And so I'm like, again, it's perspective.
Yes.
And it's not so that we can be, do the spiritual bypassing thing and be like, oh, I'm not worried about it because it'll work itself out. It's
exactly.
So that it's so that we can. It's like I've been saying this all week. It's like an airline pilot doesn't get scared to fly a plane, even though they know that they are 30,000 feet in the air. Yep. It's super dangerous.
Yeah,
they could crash. Da 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 da. They're not scared. Why? Because they know how to fly a plane.
That's such a beautiful representation of what you're speaking to. They're not scared because they know how to fly a plane.
And so it's serious. They're alert. They're taking it seriously. They're alert. They're watching everything that they should be watching. And they're taking great care to do what they're doing, but they are not panicking because they know how to fly a plane.
Yeah.
And that is kind of where I am. Is like, I'm not saying I know exactly how to beat fascism, but I'm saying
Yeah.
that within our collective, you know, history, our collective memory, and also I'm coming from the perspective of nonviolent struggle. That's my entrance into talking about race, right?
Yeah.
So what I know about nonviolent struggle is that there are hundreds of case studies. There was one study, 627 conflict situations were studied between 1900 and 2019, and they found that nonviolent struggle was twice as successful as armed struggle in all of these different cases. But that's not
Wow.
even the point. It's just the fact that those cases exist, right?
Right.
The fact that they exist, you look at them and you see that the principles are the same.
Yeah.
All you got to do is organize yourselves, take good care of each other and
Hmm.
yourself, and refuse to do what Simon says together. Right?
Exactly.
And then you need to figure out where Simon is getting his power from.
Hmm.
And you need to attack that thing together, right? And part of that is just getting people to join the movement because, again, Simon needs people to participate. The more
Right.
people you get to participate with you are the less people who are participating with him,
Simon. Absolutely.
right? So, like, again, like, I'm not panicked because I feel like I know that this is beatable, but I am concerned. So anyway, I know I just went off like on a
No,
tangent.
that was a great tangent because that's why all I said was like, we're gonna be fine. I feel so calm about it in my body, like
Yeah,
because to your point, we've been here before, like
right,
collectively in this work, we've been
right.
here, and I think we've just forgotten. We forgot because we keep wanting to learn new things instead of taking what we know and like getting into the flow, into remembrance, and really trying to be better humans. But we've been here before. I'm not trying to be toxic and positive, but we've been here. Like,
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that is for sure is that, and I'm taking this from a quote that I heard from a former political prisoner in Robben Island prison. They said that the human spirit is like water, and it always finds a way around oppression.
ooh,
And so my thing is that I hate saying this, like, because it may not be in my lifetime, but I'm always like, but it has to be in somebody's lifetime, so why not ours, right? So, like,
right,
let's put that out there before I
right,
say that too. Like, I don't like when people do that just to keep putting it off. Like, it's got to be in somebody's lifetime.
right.
Why not ours? But at the same time, it may not be that I see it, but I know that um, this thing can't last forever.
Yep.
You just cannot keep people down forever. And when I was in Palestine last May, that also it reminded that's just saying that reminded me of that is that
Yeah.
someone basically said that I was like how because I'm looking at people, I'm talking to people in Palestine, in East Jerusalem, and they seem okay. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, and that was my thing. I was just like, how are you okay?
Reacting.
Yeah, you
Right.
know what
Like,
I mean?
why are
Like,
you just so present?
yeah. And this one guy was telling me because he was giving us this tour, and he said he basically just said that he has the long view in mind. You
Huh.
know, he has the long view in mind. He's like, people have different regimes have ruled in this area for centuries, and I'm
Yeah.
sure people living under their rule thought that it would be forever and ever, that it would never end, and it always did. It always does,
Yes.
right? And that has happened so many times. We have to remember in Haiti, people believed that slavery would always be a reality. People believed that Jim Crow would always be a reality. People believed, all these people believed that the divine right of kings would always be a reality. All these things have ended, and so it's like, again, I do have my moments where I'm like, this is too much. This is too much. But ultimately, I also feel okay because I feel like I have perspective.
Right. Right. You have perspective and you have remembrance. And that's why for you in your work in nonviolent struggle, you have the understanding of like what's in front of us and what our role is. And I wish more of us could get on that vibe with you of just like, you're right, Andre, you're right. And not be so taken over by Simon Says that you have to participate
Right.
Isn't there that quote like is the fastest way to forget your power is I forgot it. Never mind.
Yes, I know the quote you're talking about.
Yeah.
I have it in my hope notes. I'm gonna look it up.
Yes, please bring up those hope notes. But it's also beautiful just to hear like there's someone else out there who has that same belief as me. Like that deep connection of like, okay, we can vibe. This is a good vibe. We believe like we know, you know.
Right. Right.
Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
what
The
what
most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Is that the one you were thinking
that's the
of?
one I was thinking of. Thanks for holding that up.
That's Alice Walker.
T- Come on, Elder, tell us what it is. It's like we forgot we have it, and can you imagine what our collective power can do together?
Yeah, I think that is the big thing is that there is this illusion of powerlessness because we don't realize that we're playing Simon Says.
Mm-hmm.
People who are playing Simon Says don't realize that they have the power. Like when I play that with, I always play that with, whenever I get the chance to play that with audiences, I'm always like, all right, we're gonna play a game about power. Call them
Yes.
Simon Says, da da da, and I do it. And when I ask, because I always end up asking everyone to stand up and pull their pants down, and nobody ever does it. And then when I do that, I'm like, okay, now let's talk about power. Like, who has the power
Right.
in the game? And even after they disobeyed the command, it still hasn't registered. It still hasn't registered for some. For a lot of people, it has. Most people, I would say, actually, most times that I do it, most people are like, oh, we do, right? But I still do hear people say Simon. And
Yeah.
so, like, I think that's the big thing is like, okay, as individuals, no, you don't have that power.
No.
You know? But collectively, yes. Like,
We could do so much collectively.
yeah, like if soldiers refuse to kidnap migrants and deport people stuff like that, then what does it matter that Trump says to do it? You know what I mean? And I start with them, even though like that's kind of unimaginable for people, but I want to do that one too, just to complicate some of these binaries that we have too.
But that
Because
was so beautiful because you said imagine and we can't get anywhere until we start really imagining and visualizing and seeing it here so that we and playing with it so that we can see it in real time and manifest.
and the crazy thing is that like, because imagination is based on memory, it's like you don't have to pull this one out of thin air. Like that happens that is the turning point in so many revolutions.
Yep.
It's not the first thing that's going to happen, but
No.
but but you know that the revolution is won when the soldiers and the police start disobeying orders. They say we're not going to fire on these people.
Right.
And why aren't they going to fire on these people? Because they see their friends and their children and all these other people in the crowd. They have family members who are out there, or they see that the crowd is so big now, or the movement has grown so big that they're going to be on the losing side if they don't. If they do obey the order, they'll be on the losing side.
Yeah.
But it is imaginable, and a part of why I want to use that example more often now too is because we in America, we get so into this theoretical. You mentioned intellectualizing, right? Like,
Yes.
it gets so theoretical and intellectual that we begin to gut people of the content of their personhood and only look at them as forms. So
Yes.
people interact with me as a straight male, even though they don't know that about me. They don't know that I'm straight or not, or that I'm a man. But based on the way that they read my body, right? They do that, and then they make all these assumptions about what I'm capable of and not capable of.
Right.
And we do the same thing with people in uniforms.
Yep.
We're doing the same thing with people in uniforms. And as someone who studies revolution and has mentors that have either led successful revolutions or participated in as counselors and advisors in other revolutions and trainers, I'm like, we have to cross the bridge from theory to practice, or we have to live in the tension of theory and practice to try praxis. Because when we do, we realize that some of these revolutions are won because people refuse to dehumanize the people in uniform too.
Exactly.
They keep the humanity of that person, of those people together, and they call to that humanity. They leverage that humanity.
Yes.
I mean, the Sudan revolution is a good example too, even though again, Sudan is in problems, but they toppled a dictator, and they off like part of the revolution in Sudan was offering people who defected from the security forces to safety if they would join the movement, you know?
Right.
And part of it was even talking with police and being like, okay, we have to act like we're following the order. So we are going to shoot, but we're not going to shoot anyone. We'll shoot in the air. You know what I mean? And so like,
Whoa.
there were those kinds of conversations happening on the ground. And I'm like, I can't imagine that happening in the US.
No. I was chatting with someone recently, and they were like, we're trying to organize, but everyone wants to be in charge. And it's like, yeah, that's that hyper individualism. We're number one.
Yeah.
We could talk about this all day. However, I have a booking coming up here.
Oh,
Keeping it real with you. And I'm just curious, Andre, where is the best place folks can find you and get to know more about you and your work?
Yeah, I have an email list that I send out. It used to be every week. Now it's like a little bit sporadic. I'm trying to get to weekly again. But again, like I said, like,
Where's your energy? Like your energy just might not be there right now.
yeah. But I do, and what I try to do with the email list is I try to let people know about this stuff. Like some
Yeah.
of the stuff that we talked about. It's like imagination is based on memory, so you have to feed.
Whew.
You have to feed that. You have to learn some of the history. You have to hear stories so that your brain will expand about what the possibilities are, and then you start getting into hope. Right? Because if you can start imagining possibilities, that is the essence of hope. So that's what I do with my email list. Is like I want people to know these stories. I want people to know everything that I know. So I try to send out 100 words or less every week, and then some links, about how to take care of yourself, some wins that are happening around the world, because we need to know the good news too.
Good news, yeah.
And then, some insight. And of course I send out music. I'm writing so many songs right now just about mental health and resilience. And so, people want to find me, you can go to my website, andrehenry.co, and you can sign up for the email list, and yeah, I'll send you all that stuff.
Yeah, look, it's on the screen.
Hey,
There
look
you
at that.
go. No excuses. Andre, this is such a rich conversation. I have to have you on again. And folks, go to andrehenry.co and get on that mailing list fast.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks so much again for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Welcome. I hope you'll come back and we can talk longer about
Absolutely.
Just keeping it real. So thank you for your time today, Andre.
Okay, thanks so much. All right, talk to you later.
Yep.